conversations on this podcast are between the host and the guest and are not directed at any member of the general public. The information is for your listening pleasure, but is not offering you any personal advice. If you have heard something that you feel may be relevant to yourself, please visit your medical practitioner or mental health provider. A quick introduction for those of you who haven't listened to the podcast before. I'm Danyon, and each week I bring you a conversation with someone who I think is inspirational or brings something inspiring to the podcast. It's about things that change or could change our lives, and that's why I called it Life Changes You. Listen to the range of topics around psychology, mental health and inspiration, and find out how life changes you. Hello and welcome to Life Changes You. I'm Daniel. Another week, another guest, and this guest is really interesting, and I was inspired to talk to this person because of a video I watched on Instagram only this morning. He had reached out to me before about a year ago, and I just lost that message. So when we connected again today, I was like, oh God, I've got to have this guy on to speak. So his name is Danyon, and he's from New Zealand, and he has a project called Answers Within, which is on YouTube, and you can also find him on Instagram. And it's about getting men to open up and talk about what things they've been through and what's changed for them. But anyway, I think I should get Danyon on. So hello, Danyon, how are you?
Yeah, good mate. How are you?
Good. Really nice to talk to you. As I just said in the intro, I watched that video this morning through a mutual friend of ours, the Mind Tradie. And I just thought you spoke openly, honest. It was quite raw. And I thought that's someone who I think would be good for the podcast because I think it's inspiring what you've been through. So do you want to give me a bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so my name's Danyon and I'm originally from Christchurch, New Zealand. I currently live in a small town called Blenheim in Marlborough. I've gone through a bit in my life, a lot of drug and alcohol abuse. It hasn't been until like the last 6 or 7 years I kind of realized that it was possible to actually stop using the drugs and alcohol and kind of figure out the reason as to why I was using them. And a lot of the reason was because I didn't really feel comfortable in my own skin, and I didn't really feel comfortable with the life I was living, and past circumstances kind of led me to that with past trauma and stuff like that. So I use it as an excuse to kind of just completely self-sabotage and destroy my life. It wasn't until I ended up in prison in 2012 that I had this, you could call it a spiritual awakening, where I kind of realized that the prison isn't actually a physical form. Like, yes, I was locked in a prison, but the most worst and horrible prison I've ever been in is my mind.
Right.
And it's kind of just taken me on a journey from there, Daniel. I ended up in a rehab when I got out of jail, and like I say, I realized that it was actually possible to give up the drugs and alcohol and start facing myself to who I am authentically, rather than plugging myself up with drugs and alcohol to kind of escape reality.
So can I ask you how old you are now?
Yeah, I'm 29. I'm 30 this year.
So you were in prison when you were 22, 21?
No. I was in prison when I was 18.
18. Wow.
Yeah.
Look, I think what you said there before, that you were in a structural prison, but the worst prison was the prison of your mind. I mean, that is pretty much for anybody out there, isn't it? Because what we're thinking, what we're doing, how we feel about ourselves, past trauma, past things that have happened to us actually make us who we are at that moment. And I guess you saying you had a spiritual awakening, it was a time when you realized that there was different things you could do in life and there was opportunities. So do you want to tell us a little bit about, what that spiritual awakening meant when it happened?
Yeah, definitely. So like I was surrounded by a lot of broken boys, broken men. I was in the youth unit of the men's prison. So it's a unit that they put the younger guys in before they go into the mainstream population. Yeah. So there was a lot of guys that made, really irrational decisions, intoxicated, took people's lives, etc. Yeah. And I got to know these people on quite a deep level because obviously there wasn't that I was aware of, apart from prescription drugs and stuff like that. There wasn't a massive, everyone was clean and sober as far as I knew.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I basically met these guys in some form of authenticity, and I got to know like a lot of the bravado and a lot of their ego and stuff was all kind of acting from fear and stuff that happened to them. So a lot of it was survival and coping strategies. So I actually got to see, some really vulnerable sides of it and started to understand it from my own journey. I started to realize that I'm not this, big gangster or whatever I perceived to think I was. I realized and kind of took a few looks in the mirror to realize I'm, a white ginger skin. I was weighing, I was very skinny back then as well. And, I was full of ego, but I realized in that environment that, wow, okay, where I'm going now is there's only going to be a couple of kind of options. I'm either going to end up in and out of jail for the rest of my life, or I'm going to end up dead. So I got the opportunity to go into a rehab, to a drug and alcohol treatment center, and I made that decision and I went in there. And obviously when I went in there, I've relapsed quite a few times after that. But what that did for me was cemented a pathway. So when I would go back into relapse and when I would start using drugs and alcohol again, I know that it was only because I wanted to escape my reality. It wasn't the fact of that I was, obviously I was addicted and stuff like that. It was more just wanting to escape who I was as a person and have a break from that as such, but it only created more problems. But going back to your question around the spiritual awakening in jail, I just kind of realized who I was, and I was here to help other men. I wasn't here to destroy other men. I wasn't here to, put pipes in people's hands and sell drugs. And what I thought I was doing before going into jail was all false, and it wasn't my reality. Like it was never going to be something that would create positive change like I'm doing now. You know what I mean?
That's great. That's great. So when you first went into jail, you were saying before you had like this bravado. So before you went in, did you feel like you were a bit of a gangster and you were making a good life for yourself, even though I guess you were a bit confused with using drugs as well? And then you got into prison and you went, hold on a minute, this isn't the life I want.
yeah, that's exactly it. I went in there and actually met some gangsters and thought, okay, well, it's definitely not me, I don't. Yeah, I don't resonate with this, and this is I've gone too far. You know what I mean? I've taken it too far, and I'm now in a physical form of a prison.
Yeah.
But and I think that was the most powerful part of it is realizing that the worst prison's actually within the mind, but the external can reflect that. So, when you're living in that prison and then sooner or later I'm actually in a jail, and it's like, I can't really get any worse than that. Well, it could. And and that's what I mean. My journey definitely tells the story that, I've been very close to death as well. And I've, had some very serious attempts of trying to take myself out also. So, I think that turning point for me was definitely going into jail and meeting some really broken souls, but then also realizing that these guys are actually really, really awesome guys. They've just made some really irrational decisions and they're acting out on, past traumas and emotions and stuff that they can't actually believe that they can process.
Yeah, look, that's really powerful what you're saying there, because I know we hear things like, oh, you don't mess with those people. They live over that side of the town and that's the rough area. I worked in an area a few years back, probably 10 years ago, and it was classed as, a really poor area of Melbourne and rough and tough. And I met some fantastic people there. It wasn't like, but I guess it's stereotyping of things. And to say that you were in prison and you realize that a lot of these guys were vulnerable and were trying to deal with stuff. But I think for you, your realization that you weren't fitting in there and that wasn't where you were supposed to be. I mean, that's really powerful, because there are so many people that go in the prison system and then start getting, worse into the prison system and, learning things so that they can get outside and do other things. Whereas you turned yourself around, and it might have taken you a while, and you said you went back to rehab a few times, but you still came out and you're still where you are now, which is a positive thing. And for you, speaking to other men or trying to help men open up about what's going on in their lives, you've got a really good story, because it's not, well, I was in prison and now I'm doing this. You're showing that you were vulnerable in those times. And there were times when you wanted to escape reality because you didn't like what was happening. So the easiest thing to do is to turn to drugs or alcohol, because that helps you get out of that reality. But then you come back to reality and then you've taken your path again. That's brilliant.
Yeah, no, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. And that's exactly right. And I have definitely been a slow learner. I went into the youth unit twice. So I got out. I actually got out. I was 17 when I went in there originally, and then I got out on my 18th birthday.
Wow.
And then I got arrested that night.
On your 18th birthday?
Yeah, I got out on my 18th birthday, and then I got arrested that night because I got drunk and blacked out. And I can't completely remember the two occasions, but I ended up in jail twice. And I think it was the first time I got out, and they put me on some type of bail conditions and stuff, and that only lasted so long, and then ended back up in there. So, and it was only for quite, it wasn't a long time, but it was long enough, that's for sure.
Well, I guess in hindsight, you went in there the first time and you thought, oh, look, this isn't me, I'm no gangster. And then you came out and you thought, maybe I am a gangster. Went back in and went, no, I'm definitely not.
yeah, exactly. And I think, as you say, it's that message of, and that's what I'm very passionate about is letting guys know, at the age I was back then, 17, 18, it's a real turning point. It's a real crossroad, especially over here in New Zealand. Like, it's a very, we definitely have the animal sheep here quite a lot. And I think it can actually relate into the people because, a lot, especially the newer generation, with social media and stuff, it's trends, it's following, it's these rappers overseas and, this lifestyle that seems to be, Tupac and Eminem and all that type of stuff, these influencers, it's definitely not, there's not much good that comes out of that gangster stuff. Well, there's not a lot at all, you know what I mean? But I guess one thing that really stood out to me going through all of this stuff in my younger days, was the camaraderie. Like even these gangs, they weren't doing the greatest things, but it was that brotherhood. It was feeling a part of. And now, I'm older, I'm realizing that I don't actually have to be in a gang. I can be my own person and validate myself enough to have other men, like yourself, and have that camaraderie, but I don't need to be running around with patches and, that type of stuff. So it's,
And that's really good that you've come to that conclusion because, I had a brief look at what you're doing on YouTube and getting men to speak up and talk about how they've got through their struggles and how they've got to where they are now. And sharing your story with those sort of people, well, with any men, it is good because anything that helps men open up and talk openly is a great thing. We lose too many men to suicide, and you touched on it before that you tried to take your life a few times, and it's thankful that you didn't because you're now doing something that will help other people. And all those stories that you've got, that you've lived through, will be things that will help other people that are thinking of those sort of things like attempting suicide and, my life's no good, I can't do this, I can't do that. Because sometimes you find that with men, it can be the smallest thing that's going wrong, but it can feel like the biggest thing, like they're not good enough, they're not macho enough, they're not able to do what they need to do. And for you to open up and talk openly about your stuff, that actually gives all those people the opportunity to look at themselves and go, well, actually, the position I'm in at the moment is not as bad as I thought it was. Look at what Danyon's been through and look how he's come through. I mean, do you want to tell people what you're doing now as a job?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm currently an apprentice chef. It's it's been a roller coaster, I tell you that, but it's really teaching me a lot of discipline and a lot of patience and things that are really, important to learn in everyday life. Food's always been a big passion of mine. When I got out of jail and went into that rehab the first time, I started actually getting into it in the kitchen there. And that's kind of where it all kicked off and sparked off for me, the passion of cooking food and how it made me feel. So it's pretty cool that I'm pursuing something that I've always kind of wanted to do and get qualified in it. So it's definitely not easy, but one thing I have learned over the years, easy come, easy go. Things that are worth keeping are hard, and it's not easy, but it definitely creates the being that you want to inspire to be. And yeah, I'm very grateful for my job.
And look, it's good that you've got a passion that you're now studying and learning, because I think once you're passionate about something, it changes your whole outlook on life. If you're in a job that you don't really like, or if your relationships aren't working too well, you sort of feel a bit disheartened and like, oh, well, what's the point in going on? But you've now got a passion and you've found what you want to do. So that goes a long way to creating a better life for yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah, oh, definitely. And it's one of those skills that everyone's got to eat. You know what I mean? I can take it wherever I go. You know what I mean? So it's really cool.
And those couple of times you went into rehab, what was your feeling then? Were you feeling that, say that you'd already been in once and you'd got off the drugs and alcohol, and then the second time you went in, did you go in there with the idea that, look, I know I'm back in here, however, I have got through this before? So were you already sort of set up a bit more for success on your second time in rehab?
Yeah, 100%. To be honest, I've been there more than twice. So altogether throughout my youth, like throughout my teenage life, I spent 3 years, roughly around 3 years altogether in rehabs, in and out. So every time I'd go back in, and I think that's the thing, like when I would relapse and go back to self-destruction mode and do radical things and hurt people and do some really, really stupid shit, I'd go back into these rehabs with a whole, I just end up filling up that rubbish bag that I'm carrying on my shoulder with more guilt, more shame, more problems that I have to sort out, more fines that I have to pay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just kept going and going and going. And I think that's the thing with being at a rock bottom. There's that cliche saying, it goes along the lines of, the rock bottom was the solid foundation I rebuilt my life on, and I can really resonate with that, because the more down I've gone and the more mistakes I've made has definitely built me to where I'm at today, and has given me this voice that I'm able to get men to tap in and go within themselves and figure out that they actually are worth something and they are good guys and stuff like that. Yeah, it's taken me a lot of getting back up, and these rehabs have been really beneficial. And I met my beautiful fiance in the last treatment, and now we've been together roughly around 3 years now. You know what I mean? So it's good things do come out of sorting your shit out. It's just it's that process. And I think like you say, when I went in constantly after relapsing, it was really, really hard, especially like after the third, fourth time, Danyon's back again. It was like, you know what I mean? But now I'm over 3 years clean and sober, you know what I mean? So
congratulations, that's good.
It's a miracle, man. Yeah, exactly.
It's not a miracle, mate. It's that you've put in the hard work and you've learnt those lessons the hard way. Because
true.
I think a lot of the time, I really liked it when you said you had to hit rock bottom to start coming up, because, people say, oh, I think I'm going to hit rock bottom, and they don't actually get there, which is a good thing. But you actually admit that you went to rock bottom to then start rebuilding your life. And yeah, brilliant, mate. Yeah, that's really good. And you have learned a lot of lessons, some of them probably harder than most people would. But to learn those lessons and to get to the position you're in now is a great position to start helping other people. Have you thought about telling your story in local schools or in even in prison, to try and inspire people that, look, I fucked up. Now look at me now, and look at all those lessons I learned along the way. And they weren't easy. And sometimes I had to really look inside myself to find my own strength to get through these things. But I have now. And now I'm in a relationship. I'm doing a job that I want to do. So because a lot of people always think, oh, once you've been in prison, you can't do anything. And there are probably lots of people who get out of prison and carry on. There are probably lots of people who go to prison and then don't have a good life, or they do have I guess not the victim mentality, but they sort of feel like, well, I'm not good enough. I can't do anything. Well, you've built all those things back up, which is a hard job when you've gone from where you were to where you are now, to change everything around and to learn from it and to learn that you don't want to go back there.
Yeah, it's been incredibly hard. But yeah, like you say, I've proven to myself that I can do it. And to answer the question about going into schools and that, like, I've always had a massive passion to help young men, men that I can, see parts of myself in, you know what I mean? Yeah, I definitely want to do that. I guess it's just flowing with life, and I know that those opportunities will arise when it's time. But yeah, I'd definitely be very interested in getting into schools and talking to young men and sharing my story and giving some hope,
Yeah, because your story, I think, some kids that are starting to get into that, selling a bit of drugs or even just misbehaving, when they hear your story, they might go, well, look, he went through all that and I don't need to. I can stop now.
Yeah, so I'd love to go into schools and, speak to those young boys, young men that are, going through those crossroad moments and, going into that drug and alcohol phase. Because I guess, high schools are the best place to go to share that message, because that's exactly where I started getting quite heavily involved in it. And I didn't even realize how serious it was until life kind of continued and I started to understand that I really dug myself a hole. But like we're talking about, I've managed to crawl out of that.
Hey, well, look, you have. And as you say, high school, I guess between 13 and 18 is where you're really working out who you are, your sense of self and what you want to do, and who you actually are and where you fit into the world. And, like I was thinking when you were saying, you went into jail when you were 17, came out on your 18th birthday, went back in, there's also that, what's the word? Guys don't understand consequence until they're around 24, 25. And that's why there are a lot of issues with younger men around the 17 to 23-year-old mark, because we don't focus on what the consequences of our actions. We just do what we want to do. And then afterwards we go, oh, shit, I shouldn't have done that. But it's too late then, because we haven't figured out what the consequence will be beforehand. And so if you're talking to those kids, I mean, I guess even doing your YouTube videos and young kids, 14, 15, are hearing your story, that's a powerful way of media to get that out and share your story, and people sitting in their own rooms or with a few friends watching them. It's a lot better than sometimes in someone standing in an auditorium, if you were to be there and have 100 kids in front of you, because I remember when I was at school, when someone came to speak, you'd be talking, laughing, joking, and not even listening. And then the teacher would say, wait, listen. And then you'd start listening and you think, oh, I don't want to listen to this. But, your videos are a great way for people to connect with you and to listen to your story.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess that's kind of the whole idea of the YouTube channel and the Instagram and all that type of stuff, was to utilize social media, because obviously it's something that's very fast-paced thing. So I wanted to start sharing a bit of my story. It didn't really start off like that. The YouTube channel originally, me and my friend, we came up with Answers Within, and it was basically to get other guys to share their internal dialect and what's kind of gone on within themselves, and how they've found their own answers. And I guess by answers, it's more or less meaning their own identity. Who are they? There's about 45 videos from 45 different guys from all walks of life, like talking about this topic, and it's powerful stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like it's something else, and I just, it's definitely yes, I'm kind of orchestrating it and sharing some of my journey as well. Because at the end of the day, it's 50 cents for 50 cents. I'm not going to just get all these guys to share their stuff and me not share anything about my own journey as well. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to put in that work as well. And like, it's over the years, I've definitely had a lot of anxiety about sharing my past and stuff like that. But the more I've kind of grown up and become a man, I've realized it's such a strength-based thing. In our country of New Zealand, the attitude, she'll be right, harden up, come on, get on with it,
Yeah.
suppress everything. It's not working and it's not serving us. We have a really high suicide rate here. And like I said previously, I've tried it a couple of times on some really serious attempts. I've been at a really, really dark point in my life where I heavily tried to do it. And, I'm still here. And I'm very fortunate for that. But I understand and I know what it's like to not want to be here anymore. And if I could, like I say, I couldn't repeat it enough. If I could just help or resonate with a guy that's contemplating or thinking about suicide at the moment, then like that'd just be amazing. It is a very dark place to be in, and I understand it from my own experience.
And look, as I said before, by you opening up and being vulnerable and telling your story, it does resonate with other people, and it does give men the opportunity to, if they don't contact you, to talk to someone in their life. It's the same all over the world. I did a podcast probably about 18 months ago where I talked to a guy in the UK, and we were talking about young males and what they were faced with. And, I guess that finding your own identity between 13 and 18 and where you fit into the world. And if you're gay, what happens there? And if you're being bullied, what happens there? And if you don't have any friends. And there's so many things that mold you at that stage that then take you on into your life. So you being vulnerable and open will allow men to say, okay, well, I can talk about these things, because, you've come from a really tough position, and to tell your story in the hopes that other men will come forward and talk about themselves. I mean, yeah, you said you've got about 45 videos. Look, let's see if we can get some more on there, because the more that men connect and find these places where men are talking about their emotions have been something, I don't know, for probably since the dawn of time, that men have been told not to talk about your feelings, not to cry. Don't cry, you'll be okay. And crying is actually a good thing for you, because it gets everything out and it resets you. So talk a little bit about your project, how you want to get more people involved and how they go about that.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really simple. So on the Instagram page, there's a pinned video of me talking about what the project is. So if anyone does go onto the Instagram, click onto that video. But I'll explain it a little bit. So basically, it's a YouTube channel. It has a whole bunch of guys from all walks of life talking about their answers within themselves and their journey to how they've discovered those answers, whether that's through addiction, whether that's through trauma, whether that's just through everyday life. And basically, the reason I am so passionate about this specific topic is because, for me, the big change has happened from within myself. I had to make these choices. I had to make these decisions to get to where I'm at today. Like you said, it isn't a miracle, and I needed to be corrected. I've put in the work.
Yeah.
I've found that awareness. I've been able to accept it, and now I'm taking the action to have a better life.
Brilliant.
And those three pillars is something else that in the future I really want to take to high schools and put to young guys in that, because without awareness, I was in denial. Without the acceptance, I was resisting. I was pulling the fingers at the world, and then without that action, nothing was changing. It was just like stagnant water. It was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, but they weren't happening, So to be able to take that leap of faith, to be able to actually put in that work and move my feet, hand out CVs to random businesses, be able to front up and admit my wrongs, and feel them and process them, that's where I'm at. So if you're listening to this, brothers, and you want to get involved, flick us a message on Instagram. I'll give you my email, you send it through, and I'll upload it onto the YouTube channel. It's really as simple as that. And I had a target of getting 100 videos from men all over, so I'm at 45, so I'm not too far away.
You're nearly half.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's the journey. There's no time limit on it. You know what I mean? And once I've got 100, then I'll aim for a bit more. But yeah, it's just basically having that open platform 24/7 for, like you said, guys can go to at any given time, jump on YouTube and watch some videos and get some inspiration, hopefully, and get some hope. And if they're struggling, realize that, there's 45 different guys from all walks of life talking about their journeys and their hardships. And, they're still here in this present moment, trying to be the best versions of themselves.
How did it feel when you got your first video in?
It was amazing. It was really cool because the guy that did the first video, he's over in Canada, I believe, or over in the States somewhere. And he actually created a movement and a podcast that I ended up becoming guests on. So right. It was really special. And the universe is a very powerful thing. It's you put good into it and you continue to create the change. And that's what I mean with the high school talks and stuff like that. I know within myself that's going to happen. I just need to keep doing the next right thing.
I loved what you said before, that you needed to be the person to change what was happening to you. You had the thoughts about how you were going to change, and then you put that into action. Because I think I like listening about the universe and law of attraction and all that sort of stuff. And I think it all works in the background. But at some point, the person has to do the action. They can't just sit there going, oh, I want to, I want $1 million and it's going to happen. You have to be out there working really, really hard to get that $1 million. But there are still people out there that think that they don't need to do anything. It's just going to happen. But you're showing us that, this was the position you were in. What you wanted to do was something different. You had a few realizations in there, so your thoughts, you turn them into changes, and then you put it into action. And this is where you are now. And it doesn't mean you're a superstar, but it means that you've started to create a movement, which is what is needed at the moment. And what the good thing is about social media, there are a lot of people like us that are putting out positive messages, are putting out podcasts, are putting out videos, are putting out updates, helping people to understand where they're coming from and where they're going and how they can make these small changes. On one of the lives I had last year, a woman said to me that she'd been seeing a psychologist for 2 years and just felt like giving up because nothing was working. And I had said in the live that, sometimes you have to try a few different psychologists before you find one that fits. And just because you're told this is a good one doesn't mean that's the fit for you. So she went and saw a different psychologist and she said, Dan, the change in my life is amazing because they actually helped me start working on some goals of what I want to do and help me putting things in perspective. So, you can change things. You just have to want to change it. You have to think about changing it, and then you have to put it into action. And that's exactly what you've done, mate. I mean, I'm so glad I spoke to you because watching that video this morning that was sent to me, it was like, wow, this guy is so open and raw about everything that's happened to him, but he's got resilience. He's got so many things that other people are finding hard to find. And if you can find all these things and change everything around, that's powerful for you to show people that, look, I went from this to this. Your story's amazing. It's really good. And well done, man.
Thanks.
And what I like about it as well is you say, look, I fucked up a few times and I had to go back to rehab. I can't remember how many times it was. I think it was 3 or 4 or 5. But you went back and then you got back out and you started again. You didn't just go, oh, fuck it, that's my life now. I'm just going to continue on drugs. You realized that there was something else to it. You fucked up again. You went, look, there's still something I want to do. And now you've got to the position where you are because you didn't give up trying. You didn't give up believing in yourself. You went, I can do this. And we all make mistakes. We all screw things up. and life is always changing. That's why this is called Life Changes You. And you're a perfect description of Life Changes You, because you went through what you went through and you didn't stop trying to change where you were going. And now you have changed where you're going, and you're in a great position now to carry on and to help other people and to motivate people around you.
Yeah, I am, and it's a really good feeling, and it's something that, has definitely, like you said, has taken a lot of action to get me to where I'm at today. And like, I have to always, do things like ground myself, go into nature and do these things that keep my cup full, because I can't pour from an empty cup. Have tried before and it's failed epically, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I can carry a message. I can't carry people, I can't carry all these guys, like I can carry the message, and I can hear, hear the struggle and give, some of my experience away verbally and that. But at the end of the day, people are going to make those decisions and choices. And I think that's probably been one of the hardest things as well. Like, I had, some really good bros of mine, that are, probably still deep in addiction and like really wanting to help them. But what was actually happening when I'd try and help them, I'd end up joining in using again, and I'd end up relapsing, you know what I mean? And there's that cliche saying of sitting in the barber chair long enough and you'll get a haircut, you know what I mean? And for me, like you've been saying, like I've actually had to change everything. There's one thing I've had to change, and that's fucking everything, because the way I was looking at things and the people I was hanging around were on that negative type frequency of fuck the world and fuck everyone and all that type of stuff. So I've actually had to really go inwards and find out who I am as a person, and then be able to kind of share that message with brothers and it resonate and help,
That's really good, because that's another thing I don't think people always understand is that, and I'm not saying this because there's lots of stuff on social media about, you're only as clever as the 5 people you hang around with, you're only as motivational as the 5 people you hang around with. But from the negative side of that is, yes, if you hang around with people who you used to do drugs with, eventually you're going to go back to that. So if you've pulled yourself out of that position, they might never come to the position you've come to where they can change their life. That might be their life, but it's not your responsibility to be there trying to help them through. You can help them with your messages through YouTube, but you've also got to focus on yourself. And that is actually a drawback for you. If you go back to that world to try and help someone, you'll likely be pulled back in it. So if you can stay out of that world and help from afar, that's a better position for you, because there's no chance of you relapsing if you're not around the thing that makes you relapse.
Yeah, funny that.
Yeah.
It's taken me a while to figure that one out, mate.
But you have figured it out, and now you know that's exactly something that if you step back into that pond, you're going to get swallowed up, because it just doesn't work for you. But if you stay out of it, look at where you're coming to now. You've changed your life around, and it's all positive, mate. It's great. It's really good.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, look, so people can contact you at Answers Within, either on YouTube by dropping a comment there, or Answers Within on Instagram. So it's at Answers Within. And then you can send a message to Danyon. You can watch some of his videos. If you're listening to this now, go and watch a couple of his little videos, because they are powerful and will make you think about life. Because I had so many little questions just watching them, and it was the first time I watched it. But what I liked was how open and honest you were, because they're the sort of things that help people change, by hearing stories like that. If we all do the nice fluffy unicorn type stories, no one changes. Everyone's just happy. But yeah, your story, it will resonate with a lot of people, and a lot of men. Go and check out Danyon's stuff on Instagram and YouTube, and maybe upload a video to Danyon to put out there, talking about your experiences in life and how you've been able to change your life, and how you've been able to get out of situations that probably weren't good for you. This guy here, he's open and honest and tells you everything. So, be open and honest, and it will help another person, another man, or they might relay it onto another man and who watches it and goes, actually, that's going to help me. So, Danyon, it's been brilliant talking to you.
Yeah, you too, Daniel. It's been awesome, man.
It's fantastic. And look, one day I might upload a video for you.
Awesome.
All
I
right.
can't wait.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Catch you later, mate.
Well, that was another episode of Life Changes You. If you liked it, please share it with your friends and share it on social media and subscribe. Remember, you can follow us on Instagram and watch live conversations on Wednesdays and get daily updates. You can also follow the YouTube channel and watch live conversations and listen to the podcast from there. Keep sending in your emails and messages, as I love reading them and interacting with you, and I'll always respond to you. So until next week, take care of yourselves and each other.